Hello there, and welcome to episode 36 of Dead Reflections Podcast. We are your hosts,
Caleb,
Kolby,
and I'm your boy Josh, aka Drifter Voyages. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you are.
When are we going to change our names?
I don't know. New episodes every Friday. Our goal here is to give someone at the table the chills, and if we're lucky, we might even send those spooks along to you.
Yeah, we just had a blast at West Texas Fear Fest.
I'm tired.
Up next, actually tomorrow for us, we will be at the Ballroom in Austin, Texas, for the Never Rest EP release show. That'll be playing alongside Never Rest, Koenigzor, Mothman, Designs, and the Venice. And then the day after that, October 14th, IXI Fest, Game Day Sports Bar in Harker Heights, Texas, playing with Astrixian, Everyone Dies in Utah, Rain, Beyond the Dead, and Psycho Pact. Shows are always subject to change. Come through and show some support. By the way, this is our metal band we're talking about. Forgot to preface that.
Yeah. We do have one.
Yeah. I always wondered why my throat hurts sometimes.
Yeah, this you're seeing the direct aftermath of a couple days after a show and a long drive home from Odessa.
Yeah.
But shout out, speaking of Odessa and all them nice people over there, shout out Brightburn. I'm wearing their shirt.
That's a good segue.
Yeah, thanks.
We're rocking the merch.
What shirt y'all wearing?
I'm rocking Wicked clothing with the shirt. It's like a ramen bowl, but it's a skull, which is like my two favorite things, and Foxgrove on the hat. Yeah.
The MLS season for the Dynamo has ended, so in lieu of that, I'm wearing a Surge supporter shirt.
This is a fire shirt.
It's a cool shirt, and they just did like their end of year, like thank you for all the support and everything. And they used one of my pictures that I sent them, so it felt fitting.
Oh, nice.
Also, I have slightly lost my voice. If you haven't already been able to tell, it's in and out, so we'll push through.
You just sound like 60-year-old Caleb.
Oh,
yeah.
Trust me, I know. I've met him.
Yeah.
Oh, is he a good guy or is he just
a lot
as
of
bad
gray
as a
hair?
person?
He committed a lot of war crimes, but now he's chill.
War crimes of all things.
Yeah.
As long as I'm chill.
Yeah, as long as I'm chill. So we pulled attic as the topic for this week from Stephen Alexander.
Yep.
And what kind of stories do you guys got?
Not about addicts. My story is about a little something that a person receives at his doorstep, and it ends up being some
stuff.
Some stuff.
That's not good stuff and things.
It's called Do Not Open, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I've got an attic story.
So it's a little. Mine's longer, so I'll be going last today.
Yeah, a little bit of a change up in the normal order that we usually tell stories.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
My story is titled Toys in the Attic. It's a creepypasta, and it's creepy.
That's crazy.
Oh, shit. Wow, dude.
I don't remember the title of mine, but I remember it is about paintings in an attic that are changing constantly. So
that's interesting. I'm really interested.
It gave me a little bit of a spook, and then it reminded me a lot of the Layers of Fear game. So that's cool.
Layers of Fear is a great game.
Solid 2.2. I think it's only 2 games.
Yeah, I played the second one. I actually streamed it.
I thought you were rating it for a second.
Solid 2.
Solid 2.
2-part game.
For show.
Well,
let's get this going.
Nah, y'all are gonna go first.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
Nose goes. I go first.
Yeah, because my voice hurt.
All right. So this is my story. I did not write it. It was written by Nate J82, and it is called Toys in the Attic. Christmas has always been a hard time for me. Childhood memories of bickering relatives, drunken tirades, and hostile dinner conversations made me wince at the mere mention of the holiday. In the Christmas of 1989, I broke my collarbone on my new Togoban. In Christmas of 1997, my brother drove the family car into a lamppost. And in Christmas of 2000, my grandmother set the kitchen ablaze while attempting to cook a turkey. But it wasn't until the Christmas of 2008 that a real tragedy occurred. Jennifer and I met in the fall of 2002, engaged in the winter of 2004, and married in the summer of 2006. She gave birth to our son, Noah, in the spring of 2008. This was our first Christmas together as a family. It was a beautiful new model home in a quiet neighborhood in a peaceful little town. It was just a few days before Christmas when he broke in. I was staying late at the office before locking up for the holiday. He didn't take anything. He didn't move a single thing out of place. He just walked upstairs and went after her. The police called it the most senseless and animalistic act that they had ever seen. And somehow, with her blood painting the walls, they still never managed to find the monster who did it. And I would never know why it happened. This year was going to be a new start for us. Despite the Scrooge-like demeanor I developed every year at this time, Noah loved Christmas. At almost 8 years old, he didn't have much to say, but everything he did say had to do with stories of Santa, elves, and reindeer. The little scoundrel was a better sleuth than he was a conversationalist. Last year, he managed to find his Christmas presents behind my tool bench in the garage. But this year, his presents were going into the attic, where I knew he could get them, where I knew he couldn't get to them. The mid-century home was purchased after Jennifer's passing, had much older antiquated attic stairs than our old home did. I had just finished packing the Christmas presents when in that dusty old attic when I realized it was time for his school bus to be dropping him off. As I pushed the heavy attic stairs up, I had a smirk of satisfaction. That child was not making his way up those steps. It was December 11th. Christmas Day was still 2 weeks away. My parents weren't arriving until the 18th. The holiday shopping was done, and school was now out until January. So Noah and I were going to have a few days of holiday bonding all to ourselves. This might have been the first Christmas in many years that I would truly get to enjoy. 5 nights ago, Noah stayed up a little later watching holiday specials on the television. He went to sleep around 8:30 and I went to bed shortly thereafter. It wasn't until 11 o'clock when I first heard those light footsteps scattering across the hall. I suddenly became alert as the footsteps stopped at my door. I sat up as the door slowly began to creak open. It was Noah. I was put at ease at the sight of him, but I was a little alarmed that he was up this late. He never stayed up past 9 o'clock, let alone wandered over to my room at this time. "Noah, what are you doing out of bed this late?" "Dad, do you believe in Santa Claus?" "What? Do you?" I was taken a little off guard by the question, but I decided to put his mind at ease. Yes, of course I believe in Santa Claus. Why do you ask?" "Okay, that's good, because he needs to know that we believe in him." "I know, Noah. Now go back to bed." He smiled before closing the door. I heard his footsteps scattering back down the hall to his bedroom as I quickly drifted off to sleep. 4 nights ago, Noah and I were making Christmas cards for the relatives who would be arriving in the following days. We had construction paper, glitter, scissors, and glue. It was quite a messy scene, but I thought he deserved to have a little fun on his first day of vacation. After finishing up the cards, I began to gather them all and I gather them all up and look them over with Noah. There's one for Grandpa and Grandma, and one for Uncle John, and I paused at the sight of a card addressed to no one in the family. "Who's this card for, Noah?" "It's for Santa Claus. He would be really happy if we made him a card too." I smoked at Noah's thoughtfulness and added it to the pile. Later that night, I was awoken by a crashing noise. Suddenly, I heard the footsteps sputtering towards my room again with more urgency. Noah, this is the second night in a row. You still believe in Santa, right? Yes, I told you that yesterday. Okay, I don't think Santa knows that, but thanks. Noah, what was the crashing noise I just heard? Jesus.
What did it say?
It's a Facebook alert.
Oh,
Facebook
God. Whew. All right, reset. Noah, what was the crashing noise I just heard? Noah shrugged his shoulders in ignorance and scurried back to his bedroom. I was too tired to argue with him. I was probably just imagining it. I drifted back to sleep. 3 nights ago, I was sitting in front of the television watching a football game while Noah was drawing with his crayons beside me. During breaks, I became increasingly curious as to what he was drawing. When he left the room, I picked it up and realized it wasn't a drawing, it was a list. Hey Noah, is this your list to Santa Claus? Yeah, Santa told me I have to write him one. Do you think you can mail it to him on time? No, I can't. I can just leave it here. And he knows what I want because he's magic. Wait, no. No, I can just leave it here. He knows what I want because he's magic. I nodded at his flawless logic and handed it back to him. Later that night, I heard the scurrying of footsteps across the hall again. I was growing impatient with Noah's sleep cycle, but I was still awake reading at this time anyway. But he didn't come into my room that night. He just stood in front of the door for a moment and then ran back to his room. 2 nights ago, I decided to sit down with Noah and ask him about his late night wandering. He suddenly became nervous when asked, but he finally uttered that he was waiting for Santa to come with his sleigh and reindeer. I couldn't help but smile at this. Santa won't be coming until Christmas though, Noah. We've got a few days to wait still. He seemingly brushed my statement off and made an odd request. Can we leave him some milk and cookies for when he gets hungry? I wasn't going to argue with him. I would just make a deal with him. All right, but if we do, you have to promise to stay in your bed after bedtime, okay? He nodded excitedly, but he didn't seem happy about Santa's arrival as he did a few days ago. I guess that he was getting burnt out from waiting so long. Later that night, the scurrying of footsteps began again. At first, they were faint, and then they headed straight to my room. I was more than a little upset at this point as my door opened. Noah, I thought I told you to stay in bed. He came and ate them, Dad. What? The milk and cookies. Santa came. I marched downstairs and I had to admit I was surprised to see the milk and cookies gone. But this wasn't a difficult trick to pull off either. I was done with this game. Noah, Santa isn't coming until next week, and if you keep making up stories and getting out of bed, he's not coming at all. Do you understand? Noah's face turned to tears as he ran back to his room and shut the door. I didn't mean to be so mean, but there was only so much foolishness I could take at this time. Jesus
Christ. Brother, can we turn this off?
It's on your account.
Last night, things got very weird. Noah did not speak to me for the rest of the day. I finally apologized and told him to stop making up stories. He seemed to be focusing elsewhere, though. I did not like the disrespectful attitude he was developing. Would you like to tell the truth about who ate the milk and cookies last night? He just pouted at me with an angry look. He ran back to his room and I came back with a folded piece of construction paper. I thought it was his apology. That was until he spoke. This is a card from Santa. He told me to give this to you. I had finally lost it. I took the card and I crumpled it up without even bothering to read it and threw it in the trash bin right in front of Noah. Noah, I don't know what's gotten into you, but Christmas is going to be canceled if you don't stop with these stupid little games. What do you want from me? I want my mom and dad to be back together. He once again rushed off to his room in tears. I felt guilty managing to make him cry twice in 2 days. We never really talked about his mother. He had every right to be upset now that he was older and was beginning to understand her absence. I let him cool down for a while, I decided to let him sleep in my room, both to comfort him and to keep an eye on him. It wasn't until 11 o'clock last night that he once again woke up. Dad, it's time. I was angry at being woken up at this hour again, but decided to be patient with Noah. Time for what, Noah? Santa has a surprise waiting for us downstairs. I was beginning to get a little nervous at Noah's delusions, but I finally decided to play along. Noah dragged me downstairs into the living room. When I saw it for myself, I quickly became scared for a different reason altogether. The tree was lit up and all the presents from the attic were laid around the tree. Noah, how did you get all of these down here? I didn't do it, Dad. Santa did. The hairs on the back of my neck began to stand on end. There was no way Noah could have lifted all these gifts or even gotten into the attic to find them. And how did Santa get into the attic to get them? Noah turned to me and meekly replied, "He's been living up there all week, Dad. He made me promise to keep it a secret." My jaw dropped as I tried to remain cool. Is Santa still in the house? Noah paused for a moment before answering. No, he said he had to leave after you found your surprise and after you read his letter. My breathing became heavy as I started to panic in fear. I rushed across the house towards the wastebasket. I pulled out the crumpled letter I had thrown there earlier and opened it. The front of the card was written in elegant handwriting, "All you want for Christmas." I slowly opened the inside of the letter. I almost burst into tears at the sight of it. It was a picture of Jennifer and me, taken days before her death. Written in blood across the picture was, "Together again soon."
The fuck?
My hands were shaking. I couldn't even move. He was back, and he was going to finish what he started. On the back of the card, there was no blood. There was just an ominous message. Just one simple little line. Ho, ho, ho.
Fucking Krampus?
No, so
Yeah.
basically what it was his wife was murdered
Yeah.
by some crazy lunatic. And then
Krampus.
8 years later, she was murdered on Christmas, on the anniversary of her death. The killer came back and was sleeping in their attic and basically was like talking to Noah, his son, and saying he was Santa Claus.
Krampus.
I mean, I guess, yeah, in a way.
There's a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, and then he was basically saying he was gonna, kill the dad and the son and reunite them.
Krampus.
Yeah.
The
Krampus living in the attic.
overwhelming majority of stories that I saw involved somebody living in the attic or something like that.
Dude, the
very
crazy
creepy
thing
fear.
is there's like documented proof of like
Yeah.
that shit happening like for real.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories. I know for sure there's at least 2 on radio rental that we all listen to about somebody just living in there. Yeah.
I was very concerned because you said grandma burning the house down. My grandma burned her house down.
Like, is this a story from my childhood?
You also said Uncle John. I have Uncle John.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah.
Made it a little personal for you.
So yeah, that was a good story. It's a good little. It could have been a attic story or it could have been a Christmas story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
could've
it
used it
could have
either
been
way.
either one.
I actually have a Christmas story for when Christmas rolls around.
Oh, really?
I'm saving it.
Nice. Yeah, I was thinking about that too whenever I was looking it up and reading it. I was like, should I save this for Christmas? And then I was like, no, it'll be fine. I'll find something.
Well, you'll find a good Krampus one.
Yeah, Krampus.
Y'all ready to listen to me struggle to tell a story?
Oh, by the way, during the beginning of your story,
Oh, yeah.
the mouse on the screen was just like ever so slowly traveling up the
It wasn't
screen.
traveling to me, was it?
No,
Parallel to you, kind of.
yeah, a little bit. But like, we took a video and I'll show it in the final form. But this mouse wasn't moving. His mouse over there wasn't moving. But the little cursor was just
That's
going back and
weird.
forth. It was
It's Kevin.
Oh, man. So it's a
You ready?
throwback. Yeah, so this is a Reddit story on No Sleep by user Grand Theft Motto, Motto,
Love it.
titled,
what a username.
yeah, it is a pretty good one, titled "The Paintings in My Attic Change Every Night." My father died alone early on an August morning. I was told that they found him in the backyard in the process of chopping down a small elm tree. A heart attack. The woman who called me from the hospital was gentle, even compassionate. I guess she figured the news would upset me. She seemed surprised when I sighed and asked if there was anything that I needed to do. I didn't realize that my dad had listed me as his emergency contact. It didn't seem fair and that I have any say in the matter at all. I received another unexpected call a few days later. This time it was from my dad's lawyer. Turned out that my father left me his house, 6 acres in the country, and nearly $250,000. The man who used to beat me if I got a C on a report card left me all of his worldly possessions. I guess that was all he had. Can I say no? I asked the lawyer. Of course you can say no, but you should see the house first, and the art collection. At the very least, you can sell everything and be done with it all, if that's what you want to do. So I visited the family home that my father left me. Inside of the house was an attic, and inside the attic was a collection of paintings. There were watercolors and oils and acrylics, portraits of kings and carpenters and old women with folded hands, landscapes, vivid forests, in bright oil so real that you can almost hear the birds chirping. My favorite painting was one of a girl by the ocean. Her hair was like sunshine, and her white dress tangled in the wind. She faced away from the artist towards the water. There was only one painting that I avoided. It stood in the corner of the room on a white easel covered with a black cloth. I only looked under the covering once. It was a portrait of my father, but more terrible than he had ever been in life. The thing in the painting resembled my father in the same way a drowned corpse resembles that a life once animated the body. His skin was sallow, teeth cracked, pale black veins twisting across his bare scalp. The artist must have feared my father. I can see no other reason the painter would have left the portrait with such a ravenous expression of hate. One look behind the curtain was enough for me. I left that portrait in its corner. Other than that piece of rot, though, the collection as a whole was a miracle. I spent so many rainy afternoons and cold mornings in the attic among the pictures that it was obvious to me immediately that subjects began to move. It was subtle at first. My eyes might shift in a portrait. Trees maybe rustle against the acrylic breeze. The girl on the beach was turning about a degree or two each and every day. I was terrified the first night when I heard movement from the attic. The rapid sound of tap, tap, tap and soft footsteps along the ceiling woke me up. It lasted all night, and I sat there and listened, too frozen by fear to flee the house. In the morning, after the sun was high, I crept up the stairs into the attic, armed with a flashlight and the largest knife I could find in the kitchen. Both the light and knife fell from my numb fingers when I saw that every painting had changed. This wasn't just a shifting of the scene by a few angles. It was like seeing new pictures, but with familiar subjects in each of them. The night sounds continued regularly from then on. I wasn't so afraid after the first time, though, and greeted each new morning with a trip into the attic to see the progress of my roommates. It was a long night in October when I finally saw the face of the girl in the painting. I'd already gone up into the attic with a candle after dinner to check on the progress of the paintings. In my dreams, they came fully to life and joined me, or perhaps even better, allowed me to join them in their kaleidoscope worlds. The girl on the beach was facing me that night. Her hand was raised slightly as if in greeting. Everything changed last night. The noises began after sundown, and they were unlike any I'd heard before. Thudding and crashing and ripping. There was a terrible dragging noise that repeated again and again, and sometime around midnight, I think I heard a scream. Though, I once again felt pinned to my bed by fear. I decided I could not wait until morning to see how the paintings had changed. I worked up the courage to climb up the stairs at 3 a.m. Once I opened the door to the attic, my eyes found a massacre. All of the beautiful paintings were torn as if by animals. The canvas hung in wet tatters. Frames were smashed, and everywhere, violence. Only the painting of the girl on the beach was undamaged, but, to my horror, it was changed. The girl lay dead on the red-stained sand, her hands blank and her throat ripped open. I heard a brittle creak from the corner of the room, and it took me a moment to realize that it was laughter, and it came behind the black curtain that covered my father's portrait.
Fuck.
That's fucking... Ooh.
First off, I want to say I could listen to a podcast for days with your exact voice how it is right now.
It really struggled for me.
It made the story so much better.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
So let's try to be sick from now on. All right.
That's the thing. I don't even feel sick. I just woke up and it was like, okay, out of here.
Deuces. Yeah, no, that was a.
It was a good one.
Yeah, I think if one little tiny detail of a painting changed over time would fuck me up.
All I could picture was, did you ever watch It? Like the new one, and the boy had that one painting that he was afraid of.
Yeah.
And it would, oh, dude.
Yeah. I guess, I didn't even think about that. Layers of Fear is the for sure thing that came into mind for that. Just the idea of paintings and.
Such a good game.
It is a good game.
So my story is going to take us to Amsterdam, which I don't know if we've been there yet.
I don't think so. To the Netherlands.
To the Netherlands.
Speaking of Amsterdam, I have a creepy story that a old coworker of mine experienced in Amsterdam that we talk about after.
All right. Well, this one is called "Do Not Open." It started when I was in Amsterdam for a holiday with a few of my friends. Everything you're thinking right now, you're right. We were all in our early 20s, just graduated, and decided to spend a couple of weeks going crazy on the continent. So you can almost certainly fill in all the blanks for yourself. There are very few points where I'd say I was entirely sober, and even fewer where I acted like it, though I wasn't quite as bad as some of my friends who had a hard time handling themselves. This may have been why I headed out alone that morning. No idea of the exact date, but sometime in mid-May. The others were sleeping off their assorted hangovers, and I decided to head out into the beautiful sunshine that is the Netherlands morning and take a walk. Before graduating from Cardiff with the others, I had been studying architecture, so I was looking forward to spending a few hours by myself to wander and really take in the buildings of central Amsterdam. I wasn't disappointed. It's a beautiful city, but I realized too late that I hadn't taken any map or guidebook with me. An hour or two later, I was thoroughly lost. I wasn't particularly worried, as it was still mid-afternoon at this point, and getting lost in the back streets had kind of been what I was trying to do. But I still decided I better make an actual effort to find my way back to where my friends and I were staying off of Elandstrad. I managed it eventually, but my inability to speak Dutch meant I spent a good hour riding the wrong way on the various trams.
That's one of my biggest fears of going to another country and getting lost like that.
By the time I got back to Elandstrad, it was starting to get dark and I was feeling quite stressed, so I decided to pop into one of the cafes to relax before joining up with my friends. I couldn't say for sure exactly how long I was there, but I do know it had gotten fully dark by the time I noticed I wasn't sitting at my table alone. I've tried to describe the man who now sat opposite from me many times, but it's difficult. He was short, very short, felt like he had an odd density to him. His hair was brownish, I think, cut quite short, and he was clean-shaven. His face and dress was utterly unremarkable. And the more I try to think of exactly what he looked like, the harder it is to picture him clearly. To be honest, though, I'm inclined to blame that on the drugs. The man introduced himself as John, and I asked how I was. I replied as best as I could, and he nodded, saying he was also an Englishman inside a foreign land. I remember that he used the exact phrase because it struck me at the time as very odd. He said he was from Liverpool, though I don't recall him having any sort of accent, and that he was looking for a friend who he could rely on for a favor. Now, as high as I was, I got suspicious as soon as he said that last part. I started to shake my head. John said it was nothing too onerous, just looking after a package for him until he had some friends pick it up, and that he would pay well. I thought he was talking about smuggling, and was about to fuse again when he reached into his jacket, I think, pulled out an envelope. Inside was 10,000 pounds. I know, I counted it. I knew it was a stupid move, but I kept remembering my friend Richard telling me how easy it had been to get a pound of hash through customs on his first trip to Holland, and holding that much cash in my hands, I said yes. John smiled, thanked me, and said that he would be in touch. He left the coffee shop, and I immediately started panicking about what I had agreed to. I wanted to chase after him and return the money, but something weighed me down, kept me locked into my seat. I just sat there for a long time.
That 10,000 pounds was a little heavy, huh?
I don't remember much about the next few days, except worrying about when I'd see John again. I was careful not to spend any of the money he had given me, and had decided to return it as soon as he turned up. I'd say I had made a mistake and couldn't take his money or look after anything from him. I tried to enjoy myself, but it was like this shadow hanging over me, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I waited for days, right up until the end of our trip, but he never showed up. I obsessively checked my suitcase before boarding the plane home, just in case someone had snuck something into it, but there was nothing new in there. I flew back to England with my friends, still high, and 10,000 pounds stuck into my coat pocket. It was surreal. It wasn't until a year later that I felt confident enough to actually spend any of the money. I moved down to work for a small architect's firm in Bournemouth on the south coast. It was an entry-level job, and the pay wasn't great, but it was the only offer I got in my chosen field, so I moved down there with the hopes of getting some experience in a better position in a year or two. Bournemouth was a decent-sized seaside town, though much less idyllic than I'd assumed it would have been. But rents for a place on my own were a little bit out of my price range, given my starting pay grade. I didn't know anyone else down there, and wasn't keen to share my space with strangers. So I decided to use some of the money I'd been given in Amsterdam the previous year. I reasoned they were unlikely to find me at this stage. I had not given John any of my details when he spoke to me, not even my name. And if they had been able to find me over the course of the last year, it was doubtful they'd be able to track me here. Also, if it had been drug smuggling, I suspected 10,000 pounds probably wasn't so much money to them that they tracked me this far over it. Also, looking back, this sounds stupid, but I'd just grown a beard and thought it would be hard for anyone to recognize me as the same guy. So I spent a bit of John's money on renting a nice one-bedroom flat in the Triangle near the town center, and moved in almost immediately. About a week later, I was in my kitchen cutting up some fruit for breakfast, and I heard the doorbell ring. I answered it to see two red-faced delivery men. Between them, they carried an immense package, which they'd clearly had to maneuver up the narrow stairs of the building I lived in. They asked if I was Joshua Gillespie, and I said yes, and they said they had a delivery addressed to me, and pushed past into the hall. They didn't seem to be from any delivery company I knew, and weren't wearing any uniforms. Tried to ask them some questions, but as soon as they placed the box on the floor, they turned around and walked out. They were both well over 6 feet tall and very imposing, so there was little I could have done to stop them from leaving, even if I wanted to. The door slammed behind them, and I was left alone with this package. It was about 2 meters long, maybe 1 meter wide, and roughly of the same depth. It was sealed with parcel tape, and written on the top was my name and address in thick, curving letters, but there was no return address or postmark of any sort. I was starting to risk being late for work at this point, but I decided I couldn't bring myself to leave without seeing what was inside. So I fetched the knife from my kitchen counter, cut the tape, keeping the box closed. Inside was a coffin. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. My knife fell to the floor, and I just stared at it in mute surprise. It was made of unvarnished pale yellow wood and had a thick metal chain wrapped around it, which was closed at the top with a heavy iron padlock. The lock was closed and had the key sitting inside it. I started to reach for it when I noticed two other things on the coffin lid. First was a piece of paper folded in half and tucked under the chain, which I took. The other was the presence of 3 words scratched deep into the wood of the casket in letters 3 inches high. They read, "Do not open." I withdrew my hand from the padlock slowly, unsure what I was supposed to do. At some point, I must have sat down, as I found myself on the floor, propped up against the wall, staring at this bizarre thing that inexplicably turned up in my home. I remember the piece of paper at this point and unfolded it, but it simply read, "Delivered with gratitude, J." Strange as it sounds, it was only then I made the connection with the man I met in Amsterdam. He told me he wanted someone to look after the package for a while. Was this the package he was talking about? Was I to be looking after a corpse? Who was coming to pick it up? And when? I called in sick to work and just sat there, watching the coffin for what it might have been minutes, might have been hours. I just had no idea what to do. Eventually, I steeled myself and moved towards it. Until my face was just inches away from the lid, I took a deep breath, trying to see if I could smell anything from inside. Nothing. If there was a dead body in there, it hadn't started to smell yet. Not that I really knew what a dead body smelled like. It was early summer at this point, which would mean they must have died recently, if there was a body in there at all. I got up, my hand brushed the wood of the coffin, and I realized it was warm. Very warm. Like it had been lying in the sun for hours. Something about it made my flesh crawl slightly, and I withdrew my hand quickly. I decided to make a cup of tea. It was something of a relief standing next to the kettle, as from that angle I couldn't see the thing out in the hall. I could just ignore it. I didn't move even after I filled my mug. I just stood there sipping my tea, not even noticing that it was still far too hot to drink comfortably. When I finally got the nerve to step back out into the hall, the coffin lay there, unmoving. I finally made a decision, and firmly gripping the padlock, I removed the key, and I placed it on the hall table next to the door. I then took hold of the coffin and chain and started to pull it further into my flat. It was weird to touch it. The wood still had that unsettling warmth to it, but the chain was as cold as you'd expect from a thick piece of iron, and apparently hadn't taken on any of the heat. I didn't have any cupboards with enough space to hold the thing, so in the end I just dragged it into my living room, pushed it up against the wall out of my way as possible. I cut up the cardboard box that had been sealed in and put it with the rubbish outside, and just like that, I had apparently started storing a coffin in my home. At the time, I didn't assume it was full of drugs, at least as far as I assumed anything about the situation. Why anyone would store something in such a noticeable way, or with a total stranger like me, these weren't questions I could even guess at an answer to, but I decided it was best to think about it as little as possible. For the next few days, I avoided my living room. I found being close to the thing made me nervous. I was also staying alert for the smell of any sort of rot, which might indicate there was something dead inside the coffin after all. I never smelled anything though. As the days passed, I found myself noticing my mysterious charge less and less. After a week after it arrived, I finally started using my living room again. I'd watch TV mostly and keep half an eye on the unmoving casket. At one point, I got so cocky as to actually use it as a table. I was drinking a glass of orange juice at the time and absent-mindedly placed it on the top of the lid, not really realizing exactly what I had done. At least not until I heard movement from underneath it. I froze, listening intently and staring, willing myself to have been imagining things. But then it came again. A soft but insistent scratching, just below where I placed my glass. It was slow and deliberate and caused gentle ripples to spread across the surface of my juice. Needless to say, I was terrified. More than that, I was confused. The coffin had been lying in my living room, chained and unmoving, for well over a week at this point. If there had been anything living in there, it wasn't delivered. It seemed unlikely it would be still alive. And why hadn't it made any sound before if there was something in there capable of movement? I gently picked up my glass and immediately the scratching stopped. I waited for some time, considering my options before I placed it back down on the other end of the lid. It took about 4 seconds for the scratching to start up again, now more insistently. When I took the glass away this time, it didn't stop for another 5 minutes. I decided against doing any further experiments and instead made the very deliberate decision to ignore it. I felt at that point I either needed to use the heavy iron key to open it and see for myself what was in there, or follow the gouged instructions and resolve myself to never look inside. Some might call me a coward, but I decided on the latter. That I would interact with it as little as possible while it lived in my house. Well, I guess lived may be the wrong term. I knew I made the right decision the next time it rained. I heard the box begin to moan. It was a Saturday, and I was spending the day staying in and doing some light reading. I had few friends in Bournemouth, and something about having a mysterious coffin laying in my living room made me reluctant to make the sort of connections that might lead people coming around. So I spent the most of my free time alone. I didn't watch a lot of TV, even before my living room was taken over with storing this thing. So I found myself sitting in my room reading quite a lot. I remember I just started Michael Crichton's The Lost World at the time, and it started raining outside. It was a hard, heavy rain, the sort that falls straight down with no wind to disturb it. Until everything is dark and wet. It was barely past midday, but I remember the sky was so overcast and gloomy that I had to get up and turn on the light. And that was when I heard it. It was a low, gentle sound. I've seen Dawn of the Dead. I know what the groans of the undead are meant to sound like, but it wasn't that at all. It was almost melodious. It sounded almost like singing, if it was muffled by 20 feet of hard-packed soil. At first, I thought it might have been coming from one of the other flats in my building, but as it went on, and the hairs on my arms began to stand up, and I just knew where it was coming from. I walked to the living room and stood in the doorway, watching as the sealed wooden box continued to moan its soft musical sound out the rain. There was nothing to be done. I made my decision not to open it, and this certainly did not make me want to reconsider that. So I just went back to my bedroom, put on some music, and turned it up loud enough to drown out the sounds. So it continued for a few months. Whatever was in the casket would scratch at anything placed on top of it and moan whenever it rained. And that was that. I suppose it goes to show that you can get used to anything if you have to, no matter how bizarre. I occasionally considered trying to get rid of it or finding people like you guys to investigate. But in the end, I decided I was actually more afraid of whoever was responsible for entrusting me with the coffin than I was of the actual coffin itself, so I kept it a secret. The only things that worried me was sleeping. I think it gave me bad dreams. I don't remember my dreams, never have, and if I was getting nightmares, they were no different. I didn't remember them, and I certainly don't now, but I know I kept waking up in a panic, clutching at my throat and struggling to breathe. I also started sleepwalking. First time that it happened, it was the cold that woke me up. It was the middle of the winter, and I tend not to keep on the heating when I'm asleep. It took me a few seconds to fully process where I was. I was standing in the dark in my living room over the coffin. What concerned me more about the situation was the fact that when I woke, I was holding the key to it in my hand. Obviously, this worried me. I even went to my GP about it. Not sure what GP means.
General practitioner.
Yeah, okay. Doctor.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, who referred me to the sleep clinic at the nearby hospital.
Not sure what a GP.
I don't know what you British call a doctor, but the problems never occurred in a clinical setting. I decided to hide the key in more and more difficult to access places, but I still kept waking up with it and was starting to panic. When I awoke one morning to find I actually placed the key within the lock and was, as far as I could tell, moments from opening it, I knew I had to find a solution. In the end, what I took to doing was perhaps a bit elaborate, but seemed to work. I would place the key within a bowl of water and put it in the freezer, encasing it in a solid block of ice. I still sometimes find myself trying to get into the key in my sleep, but the chill of the ice always woke me up long before I could do anything with it. And in the end, that just became yet another part of my routine. I lived like that for almost a year and a half. It's funny how fear can just become routine as hunger, and at a certain point, I just accepted it. My first clue was that my time keeping the coffin was coming to end was when it began to rain and there was a silence. I didn't notice at first, as my habit at that point had been to put on music as soon as the weather began to turn, but after a few minutes I realized there wasn't anything to drown out. I turned off my music and went to check. The living room was silent. Then came a knock at the door. The sound was light and unobtrusive, but it rang out like thunder in the quiet flat. I knew what I had seen as soon as I opened the door, and I was right. John and the two delivery men stood there. I wasn't surprised to see them, as I say, but they actually seemed quite surprised to see me. John had to take a second to look me up and down, almost in disbelief, as I asked if they'd come to collect their coffin. He said they had, and he hoped he hadn't been too much trouble. It hadn't been too much trouble. I told him where he could stick it, and he didn't seem to have an answer for that. He did seem genuinely impressed, however, when I got the key out of the freezer. I didn't even try to thaw it. I was so eager to have this thing out of my life that I just dropped the bowl of ice on the floor and shattered it. I watched as John picked the icy key up off the floor and told them it was in the living room. I didn't follow them. I didn't want to see what they did with the coffin. I didn't want to see if they opened it. And when the screaming started, I didn't want to see who was screaming or why. I only left the kitchen when the two delivery men carried the coffin past the door. I followed them down the stairs, watched in the pouring rain as they locked it into a small van marked Brecon and Hope Deliveries. They then drove away. There was no sight of John. That was the last I heard of it. I got a new job and moved to London shortly afterwards. And now, I just try not to think about it too much.
Okay, the music ended it like the perfect time.
Yeah.
That was dope. So, I know that story.
Oh, really?
I think I might have like thought about telling that story, and then I just felt that it was too long, like you had said, or whatever.
Well, this was on Magnus Archives.
Magnus Archives? Yeah. Oh, well, maybe that's where
Possibly, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, that dude.
Yeah, so did you catch the end, though? There was no sight of John. So whatever was in the coffin either captured John and put him in the coffin, or...
Oh, when they took it away?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so all he saw was the two delivery men leaving with the coffin closed.
Oh, yeah. Shit.
And screaming right before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He heard screaming, but he didn't look to see who was screaming.
Oh, dude, that went right over my head. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, the ending was very abrupt.
Dude.
But yeah.
Okay, so real talk, that vampire was thirsty. He just wanted some fucking orange juice. He should just gave it to him. Could you imagine just chilling?
Yeah.
And you're
with
just
my
like,
coffin. Yeah. I hate it when my coffin does that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
God, dude. That's why I only buy coffins from like Romania. I don't fucking buy them from.
And it's strange because it knew that John was close because it wasn't moaning.
Yeah.
Whenever they came,
it was like, I know that my master or whatever. Is
I know
coming.
that my dinner is coming.
Yeah, my dinner. Dude, that's insane. Okay, so yeah, that's always been like a fear of mine, like dealing with some weird shit, like going overseas, especially Amsterdam. Because I had a buddy that I worked with that dealt with some weird shit. He was in the military, like most.
He
of
just
his
got
life.
10 grand out of nowhere.
No, so one of them was he was almost a part of a snuff film.
Ah,
At least that's what they think. They
that's fun.
Yeah, they had a dude that was in their group or whatever that was a virgin, and so if you know Amsterdam, you know the red light district, like
Familiar with it.
Yeah, basically a bunch of places where like brothels and stuff like that where you can go. Well, they were walking down the red light district, and these two huge, like, freaking corn-fed fucking dudes, like, walk up, and they're like, hey, like, you want to, like, come in here and have sex with our female friends? And so they go, and they walk into this, like, bar area, and, like, all of the guys are like, damn, like, these, super hot, like, German chicks, like, just chilling in skimpy clothes, like, and all that. And the guys were very pushy. They're like, hey, yeah, like, come on, let's do it. Like, whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, matter of fact, the virgin guy, he, like, they're all talking and stuff and, like, admiring the women and all of that. And he, like, kind of pulls, like, one of the dudes aside. He's like, we need to get the fuck out of here. And they're like, what? He's like, no, like, we need to leave. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, come on, dude. Like... We know it's not like love, but we're just trying to get your dick wet, like, come on. And he's like, no, like, we need to leave. And he like makes them all come outside. And like, as this is all happening, like the two dudes are like, what are y'all doing? Like, come on, let's go. Like, they're getting kind of like aggressive about it, which then the other guys notice and they're like, what the fuck? Like, you need to chill, like, and all this stuff. Well, it turns out like they all go outside and they're arguing, and the guy that he's talking to was the guy that I worked with, and he's like, just look in the window and look on the walls. And he's like, what? And so he goes and he looks on the walls, and there's fucking upside down crosses and like goat heads all over the walls and all this like shit. And apparently at the time when this was happening, like it was like a kind of a known thing that like people would go disappearing all the time, like off of the red light district. It's just, it's not like necessarily like ghetto, but that kind of like business and stuff brings like the riffraff of the town. So it was kind of like, okay, like like obviously
not the rapper.
Obviously it's like not a safe place to be at night kind of thing or whatever. But yeah, so like he was like, I'm pretty sure we were about to be a part of a snuff film, just judging by the atmosphere of the area setup, and then like how the guys were getting aggressive and how they were being kind of
it could have just been a normal satanic ritual.
Yeah, just whatever.
We do gotta wrap up pretty quickly.
Yeah, because Kyle is gonna be
what the fuck did we pull?
We didn't pull yet.
God damn it, I thought you pulled.
No, I think it's your turn. Actually,
I'm gonna set something on fire.
I think it's your turn to pull.
Can I set it on fire?
Is there any way that we could like
that's some thick paper?
Do you put it in there with the other paper? We could do like that revealing ink that literally you have to burn it.
That's a good one.
Jesus Christ!
Because this can count for many things. It's breaking physics, and
breaking physics.
I came up one,
yeah. I came up with this one. Just like exactly what we were just talking about. A story that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like breaking the laws of physics. Something that doesn't make sense to physics. What
so
physics
even
say.
like that would even go down to like the stairs that we did that one time. Mm-hmm. That one episode with the stairs.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you go up the stairs and you fucking disappear, yeah,
Yeah, like yours.
because
or
you're like
Caleb's.
slipping into a different dimension.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, theoretical physics, that's a thing.
Or the
But
playing in the
it's all
clothes
theoretical.
racks.
Yeah. Like anything to do with dimensions is technically theoretical physics, but
So what would be an example of breaking physics?
outside of theoretical physics of something that hasn't been theorized yet, it's just completely unexplained.
Okay.
We might have to talk about it. A little
Yeah,
bit
we'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah, well, there's plenty.
Yeah.
Like, of course,
We're blanking now.
Of course, I blank.
Yeah.
But no, like anything to do with like spiritual realm, really. That
So it's a very broadened.
Yeah.
poltergeist stuff, like things flying across the room. That's breaking physics, because there's nothing to cause that. Anything that has
Probably do an exorcism story.
any cause and effect that doesn't have a cause, but that's
There's
only
definitely
an effect.
an effect.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's it for episode 36 of Dead Reflections Podcast. We'd like to shout out our friends in Dark Hour Podcast, and we encourage y'all to give them a listen and check them out.
Follow us at Dead Reflections Podcast on all social medias, or follow the link tree to find our socials. You can find Spotify, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the video version of this podcast on YouTube.
Do I need to finish it up?
Email us at deadreflectionspod@gmail.com to submit your stories. Let us know how we're doing, and make sure you tell me that my voice sounds very nice, not bad at all. And we do have a band, and you can find all the social medias at FWFTX.
Please leave a rating or review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It puts us in the more horror podcast playlists and helps new people find our creepy stories. Thank you for all your continued support. And remember, tell your family, tell your friends, and tell the monsters under your bed to listen to Dead Reflections Podcast. Have a spooky night.
Yee.